Hey, 5th grade, I hope everyone's staying safe and healthy. Before we get on to our lesson today, I just want to remind you that we do have a Google Meet today. Your Google Meet will be from 10 to 10:30, so come hop on there, say hello, and bring some math questions for me to answer. So yeah, let's just get right into this lesson. Today you had to do Module 5, Lesson 15, so I'm just going to go right into that. You had to copy down notes from page 212 and 213. So let's just do this. So for the first one on page 212, lesson 15, for the first one, for number 1, it says the length of a flower bed is 4 times as long as its width. If the width is 3/8 of a meter, what is the area? So the first thing that I did is I just drew out a box, and it said that the length was going to be 4 times as long as the width. So it gave us what the width is, and it said the width was 3/8. So I went ahead and I labeled my width 3/8. And then if our length is 4 times bigger than the width, then you would just do 4 times 3/8, which is right here. 4 times 3/8. And then obviously our area for formula is length times width. So what I did is I did A equals 4 times 3/8 times 3/8, because I'm taking that this is my length and this is my width. Okay, and then I just multiplied them together. So I did 4 times 3, which was 12, and then 8 was my denominator. Imagine we had a 1 underneath this 4. That would be your denominator of 8. And then I just took this 3/8, sorry, I can't talk, took this 3/8 and I brought it down. So I have 12/8 times 3/8. I took my numerators, which were 12 and 3. I multiplied them together. I got 36. And then I took my two denominators, which were 8, and I multiplied them together to get 64. So you get 36/64. And then if I wanted to simplify this, because this, I really cannot talk today, I'm sorry. If I wanted to simplify this, because this is a pretty big number, I'm going to divide both my numerator and my denominator by 4. And when you do that, you should get 9/16, which is a much smaller number. And your label on that is going to be meters squared. So that is how you did number 1. Let's hope I can explain number 2 without stumbling over my words. So for number 2, it says, Mrs. Johnson grows herbs in a square plot. Her basil plot measures 5/8 yards on each side. And for A, it's asking you to find the total of the basil plot. So it gives us a picture of the basil plot right here. And what I did is it said that it measures 5/8 yards on each side. So that means that all the sides are equal. So that kind of makes it easy. So I just went ahead and I just labeled my 5/8. I didn't do it all the way around just because I knew that all the sides were equal. So I took my formula, which was area equals length times width, and I did A equals 5/8 times 5/8. I took my numerators, which are 5 and 5, multiplied them, got 25. Took my denominators, which were 8 and 8, multiplied those together, and I got 64. So my answer would be 25/64 yards squared. So that was A. That one was not too bad. Now, B is asking us to add more to the problem. So it's saying Mrs. Johnson puts a fence around the basil. So that's what this part is. If the fence is 2 feet from the edge of the garden on each side, what is the perimeter of the fence in feet? So as you can see, I took this and I kind of drew it to the edge and I put 2 feet right there just to help me visualize. As you all know, I really like to write stuff out. Helps me. So hopefully it helps you too. So the perimeter, when we're finding the perimeter, when we find the perimeter, I really cannot talk today, you just add up all the sides of the figure. So that just means you take every single side of the square, you add them all up, or whatever shape you're working with. Here we're working with squares. So for this part, what I did was I kind of drew out another thing here, since it said that it was 2 feet from the edge of the garden on each side. So I did that, and I did the math in there, and I got 5 7/8 for each side. So as you can see, I just kind of went in there, I labeled everything, I added them together, I did the math, I got 5 7/8 for each side. You can see I labeled it right here and right here. So now, I said that 5/8 yards, if I wanted to convert it to feet, would give me 1 7/8 of a foot. Wow, am I talking today? And then I have 3 yards, which equals 1 foot. So I kind of did those conversions up here, and then I brought them down here into my actual drawing. So now I'm trying to find a perimeter, which, like I said, it's adding up all the sides. And I did P equals 5 7/8 plus 5 7/8 plus 5 7/8 plus 5 7/8. I did that 4 times because if you look at our square up here, down here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So each side is going to be 5 7/8. So that's why I did that 4 times. Now, what I did to kind of make this easier was I took all my whole numbers. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 5s. If you add those all together, you get 20. I took all my numerators, which were 7. I had 1, 2, 3, 4 7s. If you add those all together, you get 28. And then our denominators, we're doing addition here. So you do not add your denominators or multiply or whatever. With multiplication up here, you do multiply your denominators. But with addition, you just kind of keep them the same and you bring them down. So for your answer for that, you should have got 20 and 28/8. And then if you were to take this fraction and kind of simplify it down, you could get 20 plus 3 4/8. And then you can add that 20 plus 3 4/8 is going to give you 23. So you take your 20 and your 3, your 2 whole numbers, add them together. We take our fraction, bring it down. I know that if I was to divide 4/8 by 4 on the top and the bottom, 4/8 can simplify to 1/2. So I got 23 1/2 feet. So that was my answer for 2B. Now, 2C says, what is the total area in square feet of the fence that encloses? So now we knew that the dimensions on the fence that encloses are 5 7/8 and 5 7/8. So in order to find the total area, what I need to do is I need to do length times width. When I find area, I am multiplying length times width. So I just did 5 7/8 times 5 7/8. And then these are mixed numbers, so I'm changing them into improper fractions, just like we've been doing the past couple weeks now, by multiplying my denominator by my whole number and then adding whatever answer you get there to your numerator, and we're keeping our denominator. So I got 47/8 times 47/8. When you multiply 47 times 47 together, you should get 2,209. And then when you multiply 8 times 8 together, you get 64. If you just go ahead and divide that, you just do long division to divide that, you should get 34 and 33/64 feet squared. So that was your answer for C. Now 2 is all done. We're moving on to 3, which also has 2 separate questions for it. So for 3, it says that Janet bought 5 yards of fabric, 2 1/4 feet wide, to make curtains. So she bought the 5 yards of fabric, and they're each 2 1/4 feet wide to make curtains. She used 1/3 of the fabric to make a long set of curtains and the rest to make 4 short sets. Okay, so I did a little conversion and I was doing yards to feet. So I said 5 yards equals 15 feet and 1 yard equals 3 feet. Okay, so all I did was I took my 5 yards, and since I know that there's 3 feet in a yard, I multiplied that by 3. That's how I got my 15. So the first thing that I need to do was find the total fabric. So what I did was I took my 15 right here that I got from doing my conversion right here, and I just multiplied that by 2 1/4 because that's the number it gives me right here. Okay, so I brought down my 15, I took my 2 1/4 and I converted it from a mixed number to an improper fraction. Again, I did 4 times 2, which gave me 8, and then plus 1, which is my numerator, 9/4. And then when I have a whole number, I've explained this a couple times, but just in case you forgot, I go ahead and I put it over 1 just so it kind of looks like a fraction. So what I did was I multiplied my numerators and denominators together. You should have gotten 135 over 4, and if you were to divide that using long division, you could get 33 3/4 feet squared. Now you're not done yet because it's asking us to find the area of the fabric she used for the long set of curtains. So it tells us in the problem that she used 1/3 of the fabric to make a long set. So now I'm going to take the total fabric that she has, this number that we got right here, and I'm going to multiply it by the 1/3 because that's the amount of fabric that she used to make the long set. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my 1/3 times 33 3/4, and I'm going to change this into an improper fraction. So you have 1/3 times 135 over 4. And then when you do all that multiplication right here, you should get 135 over 12. And when you do long division to figure out that answer, you should get 11 1/4 feet squared. So that was 3A. Now last but not least, we have 3B, which says to find the area of the fabric she used for each of the short sets. So this one kind of took a little bit longer. So you could do it. So this is the way that I started it and I did it. So I took my 33 3/4 and I subtracted it from 11 1/4, and I got 22 2/4, which then simplified to 22 1/2. If you were to divide, I really cannot talk today. If you were to divide, 2/4, the numerator and denominator by 2, you would get 1/2. Now, I drew a little tape diagram right here, and here's how I figured out what to put in my tape diagram. I looked at my 22, my whole number right here, and I said, okay, if I was to make 4 groups of those, I would end up with 5 1/2. I then took my 22 1/2, and I said, okay, if I was to make this into 22 4/8, I could look at my 4/8, and if I was to make 4 groups out of my 4/8, I would get 1/8. Okay? So that's how I did that. And then I took these two numbers, my 5 1/2 and my 5 1/2 and my 1/8, and I put them in the tape diagram. I split it into fourths, 1, 2, 3, 4. I put 5 1/2 plus 1/8 in each of the boxes. And then I said that my whole was 22 1/2. And then I just did my math. So I need to find common denominators. So I did 5 1/2 times 4/4 plus 1/8. And then I got 5 4/8 plus 1/8. And I did that math, and I got 5 5/8 feet squared. So that was the final answer. That one was a bit tricky, so if you didn't understand that one, don't feel bad. That one was definitely a little bit more tricky than the other ones that you've been doing. But yeah, that was your lesson for today. Keep up the good work. You're all doing great. And don't forget that we do have a Google Meet today. I know I said it in the beginning, but we have Google Meet. I hope to see you all there, and I will see you very soon.